Ethereum is already amazing with what it enables, but Ethereum 2.0 takes it to a whole new level. It'll offer faster speed, more use cases, more usability, and the ability to make passive income. I'll keep this video fairly high level, so don't be intimidated, but if you haven't watched my video, What is Ethereum?, you should first watch that to get a basic understanding. What do you think? You want to keep being in the videos? That was my mouth. Welcome to DeFi Now, where we give you the knowledge and the tools to thrive in the next generation of finance. I'm Josh Cross, and this is our DeFi dog, Steve Irwin. If you're new here, be sure to click those subscribe and bell buttons, or smash them if that's your style, and let's jump in. It's important as we get started to set our expectations in order. The transition to Ethereum 2.0 means moving an entire decentralized network with thousands of computers running it to an entirely new network. This is going to happen over a few years because it has to be done bit by bit to minimize the chance of failure. Fortunately, this has attracted the best cryptographers, programmers, and thought leaders in the world to make it happen. But even though it's still a long way off, people are already scrambling to accumulate as much Ether as they can so that they can make passive income by staking in the new network. But we'll get to that. First, let's go over the updates to the economic structure of Ethereum because, let's face it, what we're really interested is in how Ethereum 2.0 will affect the price of Ether and how we can use it for passive income. Currently, Ethereum runs on proof of work or mining, just like Bitcoin. The benefit of proof of work is that it's more secure than proof of stake, which is what Ethereum 2.0 will use. Proof of work and proof of stake are consensus algorithms, or how every participant in the network comes to agreement. Proof of work is more secure because miners have to use tremendous amounts of computing power to solve puzzles in order to mine a block in the blockchain and receive the block reward. They must prove that they put in the work. This is important because they have invested in expensive mining equipment and electricity, so their goal is to make that money back by securing the network, and they're incentivized to make it more secure. But the downside to this is it's difficult to scale proof of work to larger transaction volumes. Bitcoin can only handle about 7 transactions per second, and Ethereum can only handle about 15. The miners use most of their computing power solving the puzzles, so they spend very little on actually validating transactions. But this all changes with proof of stake. In proof of stake, miners are replaced with validators, and since it's still important that they have skin in the game, in order to become a validator, they must stake their coins. So, to take control of a proof of work system, you must control 51% of the mining power. To take control of a proof of stake system, you must own 51% of the coins. The Ethereum network is currently valued at about $25 billion, so it's still quite unreachable. To stake with Ethereum, you must own at least 32 Ether, and you send them to a smart contract where you lock them up. You can remove them after a time delay if you don't want to stake anymore. Once they are locked up, you can run a program on your computer or server that validates transactions. You don't need a crazy powerful mining computer to do this, since all you're doing are validating transactions. You're not mining. So you can do it with a decent personal computer or even on an Amazon web server. In fact, the latter has the benefit of more consistent internet speed and connection, which is very important for validators. So what this means is if you have at least 32 Ether locked up, you can validate transactions and receive the block rewards from each block you validate, as long as the rest of the network accepts your block. The amount that you make depends on the number of people staking, but current estimates show that those who join early will make 14 to 18% per year, but as the network matures and more stakers join, it will likely stabilize between 3 and 5% for all stakers. And this percentage is based on how much you stake. If you want to stake more than 32 ETH, you will get more rewards for it. We're going to move on to the process of upgrading to Ethereum 2.0, but make sure you stick around because throughout the whole video, we'll cover exactly how much you could potentially make as a staker when Ethereum 2.0 is up and running. The beacon chain is the first step in upgrading the Ethereum network. It will serve as the heart of Ethereum 2.0. It's called Phase 0 because it's made by programmers who start counting at 0 instead of at 1. To understand it, we have to reiterate the problem with scalability I mentioned earlier. Ethereum can only handle about 15 transactions per second because every single computer or node on the network has to verify every single transaction on the network. In computer science, you can speed up a network either by adding more powerful computers or by adding more computers. But if every computer is doing the same thing, then adding more of them doesn't make it faster, it just adds redundancy. And if only powerful computers can join, it excludes a lot of people and it makes the network more centralized. So the goal with the beacon chain is to coordinate many smaller chains that are each validating only a portion of the transactions on the network. This way we can scale much more effectively and anyone with a decent computer can join, which is why it's awesome for decentralization. Phase 0 is expected to come out later this year, and that is when everyone with at least 32 Ether can begin staking and receiving those rewards. At the current price of about $230 in Ether, if you're making on the lower end of the estimates at 10%, that means when you first start you can make a little over $700 a month. But this isn't free money. Validators serve the very important purpose of making sure the transactions that are added to the network are legitimate and they need to stay online all the time to keep the network reliable. That means if your validating node goes offline, you'll get penalized and lose some of your Ether you have staked. The same goes if you misbehave and try to add multiple blocks or invalid transactions. In fact, other validators will get rewarded if they discover you have misbehaved, so there's an incentive to make sure that you do your job as a validator. I also want to add that Ethereum 1.0 will still run in tandem with phases 0 and 1, as any bugs are worked out, so there will be both miners and validators during the transition. The beacon chain coordinates these smaller blockchains called shard chains. Sharding is a feature that's already used by databases, where you break them into smaller and faster databases. When phase 1 is rolled out, there will be 64 shard chains that each run in parallel with each other. The number of shard chains will increase over time as they need it, so this is where we really start to solve the problem with scalability. Adding 64 shards will make the network 64 times faster, but it's even more than that because each of these will be more efficient than the Ethereum 1.0 blockchain because they'll be on proof of stake instead of proof of work. If the beacon chain is the heart of Ethereum 2.0, then phase 1 shard chains act as the limbs, but limbs can't do much without the brain controlling them. So that's where phase 2 comes in. Phase 2 is where this really starts to get interesting and where you really need to pay attention. This is the most difficult part, so it's likely still a few years out. During phases 0 and 1, proof of stake will constantly be tested and improved to make it more secure, so phase 2 won't happen until it's ready. When this happens, the Ethereum 1.0 blockchain will be added as one of these 64 shards. Mining may still happen on the shard, or it may move to proof of stake. They're still hashing that out. Either way, Ethereum 2.0 will finally be operational. With phase 2, we add the computational layer that truly brings this into what will probably be the world's largest supercomputer. A supercomputer where no one entity is in charge. Everyone is free to use it and everyone is incentivized to behave rather than compromise the network. To use the network, you will pay small amounts of Ether called gas for each computation. After all, Ether is the fuel that powers the network. In case you can't tell, I am incredibly excited about Ethereum 2.0. I mentioned we can have an Ethereum 1.0 shard, but we can also have a shard that works with Bitcoin, so you can use Bitcoin within Ethereum, or a shard that works like Facebook's Libra blockchain. We can have shards that track scarce collectibles in video games, or digital trading cards. We can have shards that run tokenized stocks or real estate, making it accessible to everyone. We can use it to power DeFi with decentralized lending, savings, insurance, voting. In fact, there's already almost $2 billion locked up in DeFi to use the protocols that are already working. This is why there's already such a huge rush to get 32 Ether to stake. This year, we hit 120,000 Ethereum addresses with at least 32 Ether in them, and this isn't limited to weird crypto nerds like myself. Wall Street is now joining in a big way. The cryptocurrency trust Grayscale alone has purchased half of all Ethereum that has been mined this year. And since institutional investors have to purchase assets through regulated, secure, traditional investment vehicles, Grayscale offers the Ethereum Trust, which are shares representing ownership of Ethereum, and they are paying a heavy premium for it. As I said earlier, Ethereum is currently trading at around $230, but investors are buying these Ethereum trusts at a heavy premium. At the time of recording, they're spending about $100 to buy $20 worth of Ethereum. This equates to over $1,100 per Ether. So why would they be willing to spend $1,100 for one Ether when the spot price is only $230? This goes to show that not only do they have loads of money to spend on it, but they see the potential here and think that even at $1,100 per Ether, Ethereum is still undervalued. It's important to note that as Ethereum's price increases, everyday retail investors will gain more and more interest so they don't miss out. So there will be even more demand. There's one more thing I want to show you before we bring all of this together. This is the Ethereum Improvement Proposal 1559. Right now, miners receive both the block reward and the fees from the transactions on Ethereum. They need both because they spend a lot of money on electricity costs to mine. EIP 1559 is the proposal that once we move to validators and they aren't spending that much on electricity, they can get paid in block rewards alone. So the idea is that the transaction fees that are currently going to miners, instead they will be sent to inaccessible addresses, also known as burning them. When those fees are burned, no one will ever be able to access them again, so they are removed from the circulating supply. So why is this important? Because Ethereum doesn't have a finite supply like Bitcoin does, it will always have new Ether being added to the supply as block rewards to the validators. By burning these fees, this counteracts that inflation and brings the inflation rate down to near zero. By limiting the supply, this also drives the price up. This proposal needs to be accepted by the majority of the network, but it already has a huge amount of support, including from Vitalik Buterin, Ethereum's founder. Now, let's take a look at how all of this comes together to affect the true value of Ethereum. First, there is demand for Ethereum because so many people want to reach 32 Ether to stake. Second, those staked ETH are removed from circulation, limiting supply. Third, institutional investors are already paying a heavy premium, showing institutional demand. Fourth, retail investors will jump in for fear of missing out like they always do. Fifth, to use Ethereum, you must pay for computations with ETH, creating network utility demand. Sixth, billions of dollars of ETH are already locked up in DeFi, limiting supply. And seventh, limited inflation of ETH due to EIP 1559. It's important to note that these 7 points affect one another. As the price increases, the staking rewards increase, so more people want to stake, which increases demand. It also increases the amount of Ethereum locked up in staking, limiting supply. This will definitely lead to another crypto bubble or two, but eventually it will reach an equilibrium where the market agrees on the value of the network and the price stabilizes. The previous all-time high of Ethereum was about $1,400 in early 2018, and that was largely due to hype, as none of these things were running yet. For Ethereum to reach that price again, it needs to go up 6 times in value. This isn't financial advice, of course, but I personally think it's going to blow through that price in the next couple years. I won't make a price prediction of where I think it actually could go, but even at the lower end of $1,400, if you have 32 ETH staked and are getting the lower end of 5%, that's still about $2,200 per month of passive income. At the higher end, you might be able to add a zero to that or even more, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, I know you didn't catch all of that from watching this video one time, so feel free to rewatch it and make sure you understand where we're going. And I know you have questions and hopefully a healthy dose of skepticism, so hit me with all you got with all the questions and polite disagreement either in the comments below or by emailing me at contact@defi-now.com, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.